I'm David, this is Michael, and cheerio. Welcome to our show, where we understand it's pedantic to scrutinize the minutiae of our favorite movies and TV shows. Stick with us while we banter, because, well, ultimately it's of no true consequence. Still, we endeavor to be precise when we ask the question, does it sci-fi though?
As always, we welcome your likes, subscribes, and Patreons. Today I am making the case for Dark City, a 1998 film directed by Alex Proyas. In this one we are involved in a mystery adventure, where we are discovering the world along with our main character, who wakes up without any knowledge of who he is.
So we have 7 areas that we have to answer in Does It Sci-Fi? So we're going to go through the rule change, the distinct event, the conflict fuel, the human problem, mirror, what-if question, and examined ideal. So let's look at the first one, the rule change. So for the rule change, the world must be based on ours, mostly, but something's different about this world. Some social rule or technology or science, something's changed that makes this world not what ours is, or at least not what our world is yet.
Well, in this case, the rule change involves telekinetic powers. We are introduced into a world that is very film noir, 1950s, set at night. And our main character then wakes up not knowing who he is. So he discovers this world, we discover the world along with him.
And then later we're actually introduced, there's some larger rule changes too that we learn at the very end.
Yeah, as we learn more and more about where we are, it becomes much more apparent that we are not where we think we are.
And so what are the other big picture rule changes that we know by the end of the movie?
But at the end of the movie, we know that we're dealing with aliens,
Okay.
who are then, occupying human bodies, as well as the world that we are, the world the story takes place in is not a world in such, it's actually a machine, and that the machine builds the world. So this is an experiment.
Mm-hmm. So we start with one small rule change. We later learn there's huge rule changes
Right.
all over the place.
We're not where we think we are.
So that brings us to number 2, the distinct event. So there should be something that happens because of the rule change that's distinctly part of this world that couldn't have happened in our real world, but happened here, and that sets things off.
Well, our main character is being pursued by these dark strangers, these aliens, and they exhibit unusual abilities, and he himself then exhibits instinctively, when combating them, the same abilities, except he has a much less control over them because he doesn't really know what he's doing.
So our character was already in a bit of a solve the mystery kind of way because of, the murder that he's been framed for, or is he trying to figure that stuff out?
Right.
And then upon this, he's now realizing his mystery is even much bigger than he thought.
Right.
Because
he's not only questioning, what situation he's in, he's questioning the entire world that he lives in.
So that leads us straight to the conflict fuel. So the conflict fuel has to be rooted in the rule change because of our distinct event, but it's critical to fueling the conflict of our protagonist and the whole, what he's struggling up against. What's the conflict fuel here?
Well, the fact that he can manipulate the world, as the aliens do, is why the aliens ultimately pursuing him. Because he is exhibiting an ability that no one else has been able to do before, and much less, and it wasn't what their goal was in trying to conduct this experiment.
And he feels he has some kind of responsibility to figure out what's happening because he has these abilities and because he's in this situation.
Right. Well, the more he knows, the better he can assess how to solve the problem.
Yeah, and it's almost like the more he knows, he realizes there's even more he doesn't know.
Exactly. Yeah. The more he learns, the less he actually knows.
So that leads us to the human problem. So for a good sci-fi, the conflict can't just be, guns and knives. It has to be a problem of the heart or a problem of the mind.
Right.
So what is our protagonist struggling with? What's the human problem?
Well, he is not knowing who he is. He has been framed for a murder. Evidence points to him that he is the serial killer, but he has no memory of this, and he doesn't believe that a serial killer is who he is.
You wanted to know what it was about us that made us human. Well, you're not going to find it in here.
You know, he is then struggling with what makes us an individual. You know, what drives us as a person. Is it a sum of what our environment is, or is it something much more internal?
So that leads us to the next question, which would be the mirror. So the mirror is, which is what it sounds. So as we watch our protagonist struggle and learn and try to solve this conflict and get to the end, we should see a reflection of our own personal conflicts and our own personal things that we experience in our lives. So what's the mirror here? What are we seeing in the reflection of the protagonist?
Well, we are given the villains are pursuing him and treating the entirety of the population as rats in a maze, and they are not people but subjects.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have any sort of value, and so when the villains ultimately are revealed, and then the conflict ensues, to its culmination. We learn that they're trying to discover what makes us individuals, because they themselves, as a collective, are dying.
And then we ask ourselves that question.
Right.
What makes me the individual that I am?
Right, and ultimately that reflects on us. What the question that they are asking, we should ask ourselves.
And because we could, sometimes, like, I think about my past. There were times where I had a decision. I could have gone left. I could have gone right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the old two roads diverged in the woods, and that choice makes a difference. But the question is, did I choose who I am, or do I make those choices because of who I am?
Right. Yeah. Ultimately, it's are you a result of your experience, or are you central to more internally?
So that leads us to the what if question. So for a what if question, we should walk away from the movie after having been on the whole journey with our hero. And we have a sense of wonder that we're wondering about, and it lingers on our thoughts because we're trying to answer it, trying to figure out what the answer is. What's the question that we're asking ourselves?
Well, at the end of the movie, our hero is confronted by one of the aliens, and he tells them that they were looking for their answer in the wrong place. They were looking in the head, and they should have been looking more at the soul. So we're kind of asking ourselves the same question of what makes us us. How are we a sum of our parts, and what makes us individuals?
Will a man, given the history of a killer, continue in that vein? Or are we, in fact, more than the mere sum of our memories?
Because as a collective, that's what they're trying to discover.
So the last one in a good sci-fi, some of them hit this harder than others, is the examined ideal. So sometimes we're given a perspective to this answer of what the right answer is. Sometimes we're left to come up with the right answer ourselves. But we're looking for some kind of an examination or a question, and sometimes it comes from our hero or somewhere else of, what is the right thing to do, or what is the good thing to do?
Right.
Do they give us an ideal that we examine?
Well, they more give us the wrong answer. The aliens, they pursue a path of experimentation and manipulation. And it ultimately didn't work out for them. They should have chose a more progressive path of trying to discover their answer through means that didn't merely involve blind manipulation.
So it sounds like from our 7, the rule change seems very strong here.
Yeah, certainly.
The whole world is literally not our world.
Right. It is not where we think we are.
The distinct event seems pretty strong too.
Mm-hmm.
There's a specific thing that happened that put him in a situation that you and I will never in our lives experience.
Certainly.
The conflict fuel seems pretty good too, because that really put him down a path, doesn't it?
Certainly does, yes.
And the human problem, I almost feel like the human problem might be where this it sounds like this movie really shines.
Well, just discovering what makes us us.
Yeah.
What are we all about? Why are we who we think we are?
Because it's a question of the mind and of the heart.
That's right.
Yeah, even Cheerio thinks like, no, that's it.
Too much.
That sums it up.
She can't deal with those questions.
And then the mirror was there, but slightly looser.
Yeah, it's not really an examination of our current society. It's more of the characters, discovering about themselves.
But it's still, there is a little bit of reflection. We do
There's-
get the what if question, because we get to ask, what if I made different choices? Can I make different choices?
Right.
Like, what makes me the individual that I am?
Right. Am I, on a foregone path? Does fate decide what I do?
And of course, we get the, the trope of amnesia.
Right.
If I'm amnesia, if I wake up with amnesia, I don't remember who I am I still the same person, or will I start making different decisions?
Right.
And it sounds like the examined ideal. We end up pretty loose at the end of the movie. It sounds like they don't spend very much time on our hero. Obviously, we got the wrong idea.
Sure.
But do they tell us why the right move is right?
They don't really delve too far into that. After the main battle and our resolution between our two main characters, we kind of ride off into the sunset.
Mm-hmm. Free to make our own choices.
Yeah, freedom is kind of the best way we can describe it.
And so, does it sci-fi though?
I believe it does.
Okay. Maybe not the strongest sci-fi,
Certainly.
but certainly in sci-fi.
Right. It's much more an adventure than it is a hard examination of our current situation.
Whenever in this movie on IMDb or wherever, is sci-fi one of its top genres?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Okay.
number one.
All right.
It's first choice.
Classic sci-fi.
Yeah, it's on sci-fi lists. As far as top 100s. Yeah.
Okay. Then other genres like adventure and mystery,
Yeah, mystery.
film noir there.
Yeah.
What's your rating of this movie?
I give it 21 stars out of 25.
That's quite a lot of stars.
It is.
Because you're not always the most generous with your stars.
No.
You like to hold some of those stars back.
I do. Well, I didn't have any. They didn't ask the tough questions. It didn't throw out the hard science either. So it was much more an adventure, and it really appealed to my sense of wonder about the discovery of the world, and the reveals were very strong for me.
Yeah. Okay. So does this when you say 21 stars? Is this in your top 10 list of favorite movies or your top 100 list of favorite movies?
I would say it's top 10. I think upon it very strongly.
You think it's in your top 10 movies of all time?
I would recommend it to anyone.
Wow. Okay. I haven't seen this movie. If that's not evidenced by the questions I'm asking, so obviously you have no rating.
Right.
But it has piqued my curiosity. It's not streaming for free, but it's for digital rental.
That's correct.
Okay. Amazon?
I found it on Amazon, yes.
Okay. Thanks for sticking with us through the show. While our opinions don't matter, your likes, subscribes, and Patreon support actually does. And remember to ask, does it sci-fi though?